I will lead the way, and love will open every door that seems would not give in. For I have come to take you So, welcome here in our 3 days to awakening. I'm glad to be here and greet you and join with you in your light, and coming to a certainty of, okay, we are here absolutely willing to have an escape from, how should we say, it is the escape from perceptual level, from perceptual reality, isn't it? And that escape has been orchestrated truly from out of time. And we don't have any doubt that in our asking for help, in our directing our mind to the light, to the Holy Spirit, everything is provided and everything that we need is being given. And of course, at that level, we also know that this has really nothing to do with our own doing or how we would perceive that we could contribute something to the awakening. The only contribution that we imagine to fulfill or to have successfully experienced is really the unlearning of all the beliefs, all the meanings that we have given to ourselves, to everyone next to us, to everything, to the entire world. And so it has become a relying unto the past in every situation, every circumstance. And finally, we have realized that there's no way out, that this is a complete trap and imprisonment within one's own concepts. And we're starting to look for a way out. And that was really the beginning of our transformational experience and our direction within the self, the mind. I do need something different. I do need a complete alternative to this state of limitation, to this state of an imprisoned mind by its own self-concept and conceptualization of self. And so we have crossed many, many paths and have come a long way throughout all time. No question about that. But one thing that we never really were capable to grasp is to get completely out of the way, out of the perception of the body. And this has needed the demonstration of resurrection of Jesus Christ that is now occurring in us and through us. And I'm saying that very carefully, yet completely consciously, that there is no awakening or full awakening or complete escape from time, space, until I, speaking for myself, take that full responsibility, what my function is and what has been given me. And all I was perceiving and seeing as Jesus Christ, from Jesus from Nazareth, in his own way of teaching, healing, demonstration of resurrection, is really just seeing myself in my own mind. Was throughout all time of projecting it as an idol, as somebody higher, somebody different, and not really accepting what the fact of the matter is, so that the complete escape can be recognized not as something on the timeline and happening in a future time, but really as a present memory, a present experience of being free, completely free in mind, and not being this, what is being seen in the mirror or on the camera, as a reflection, a holographic reflection of a body. Now, being willing to close the gap of projecting myself as somebody else who is capable doing that, who has more knowledge about it, who can better express it, who is more powerful in demonstrating it. And there are thousands of reasons that the ego will give you in order to stay in the inferiority of your perception of your self-perspective, and therefore in a worthlessness, demonstrating that yourself would still just be the same sinner as always. And that is really the concept that is broken and penetrated through these new teachings of Jesus Christ in A Course in Miracles, or through the contact with Christ's mind that actually doesn't even take and need words or a teaching that could be understood conceptually. Ultimately, all teaching is transmitted and understood on a complete light energetic level, on an energetic level that is universally understood, and is in that sense extending and communicating universally with everyone at all times, at any place, within the entire universe, right? And so the universe that you realize is only happening in you, in your own mind, that you are the experiencer and the thinker of that universe, is also bringing you into the center of the circle, into the center of perspective. And that's exactly where Jesus Christ wants to have each and every one of us. And so all we can do is to share and to demonstrate, to teach ourselves what we have learned in order not to fall into the same trap, not to deceive myself in the same way as I did it throughout thousands of years. Now, if you have followed me up to this point and could reasonably understand what I make a stand for and what I'm inviting you to finally accept, you see immediately. And that is the continuation of the previous episode that we did last week. Understanding and realizing that this is not about studying something that seems to be able to be known in a better way and accumulate it as knowledge in another way and be written about. And finally, what did we do? We discussed it, we expressed our opinions, we expressed what we thought is more aligned with the truth, how we find ourselves to be right, or to start arguing about to be believed to be right, and all those things that we have done in order to avoid really acknowledging that there is a power, a creative power, the power of mind, the power of self, that establishes us in this center of the circle of atonement. in the center of your time-space continuum of your dream. And that is exactly where everything is happening. There's the collapse happening of the imagined world with one's own imagined self-identity, and there's the change occurring, and in seeing the light, in recognizing that this doesn't serve me anymore, and this has become a ridiculous parody of the so-called life that each and everyone believes to be on this planet, and living through from birth to death. This is a joke, right? And where we arrive is not just laughing at ourselves and how we were thinking about it, but really also seeing that behind those limited thoughts and projections is none else than pure light to experience. And this is experiencing our own and true self. And this is what the light of heaven is, the light of creation. So everything else, keeping that on a level of where we can observe it, explain it, talk about it, write about it, discuss about it, it will stay in separation. It will stay in that separation between the observer and the object observed, which is then the content of the teaching, right? But the content of the teaching cannot really be observed, or is completely senseless to observe without an experience. As we always say, you can buy a cookbook, you can look at its beautiful pictures, you can read it, you can think about it, you can discuss it, how you can manage the recipes and how you might alter some of the recipes and tweak it here and there with, with some other ingredient. But unless you cook it and experience yourself in the enjoyment of the food that is presented, by that entering into the action of being about it, this is completely meaningless and senseless. And this is what we realize more and more walking along on that path to, as we say, to go home, right? To accept that being with our Creator in heaven is actually not a timely thing, is not a process, but is a living moment by moment and being about it moment by moment. And thus learning that all that is part of the perceptual level and seen and perceived and taken in a context of conceptualization is let go and unlearned. The word is really undoing. The undoing process, and being about that undoing process and acknowledging that the acceptance of the atonement is exactly representing that. It represents the undoing of our concept of the self. And therefore, of course, also the concept of the world, the concept of a being in time-space, an existence in time-space, because we want to step beyond. We want to experience ourselves now in that beyond of being the eternal creative thought in which we were created and have remained. And as you can tell, this is not about here then sharing some cute ideas or some concepts that we get out here of this wonderful and probably best book I have ever had in my hand called A Course in Miracles. And even being active with the mind training program, doing a lesson every day and going through the day the best we can, following those instructions. But this is really at the end about acknowledging who I am, who you are. And that acknowledgement of who you are must come from a direct and universal experience, or it will stay in one or another form of observation. And even if it is an ethereal, astral experience being observed and being perceived, will not do it. That beyond is really going back to the source, being there at source, and acknowledging that I am as God created me and I've remained as God created me because I know that I can only be as God created me. And that certainty that comes in comes not by learning, comes not by studying, but comes by joining in the light frequency, in that we are, and that extends to itself and by itself without effort. And in that light, brother, we are joined. And in that light, we basically only think that light. No matter, now you could say we are talking about a theme and elaborate about how to expand that theme into other aspects of the mind and of thinking. In truth, we are just joining in the one thought of God, the one thought of creation. And we just acknowledge that there is a reality in which all that is true and real is already there, meaning has already joined, cannot separate. The impossibility of separation becomes more and more obvious. And that is the acknowledgement of the impossibility of the ego thought system or reality of the ego. You know how easily it is done to express, okay, and then the ego tempts me in this and that way, and the ego is doing it this way, and so on. And it is expressed as if the ego would have its own reality. Now we are entering into a certainty of an impossibility of an ego thought system or reality, such reality. And in that, a certainty is really brought to us that is not comparable to anything that a human being can be temporarily certain. Because in the world and in the dream, it is only a temporary certainty. And then it gets lost again and gets replaced again with doubt, with fears, with contradictions. Now, in order to strengthen that certainty, we are learning, instead of that argumentation and that discussion about it, we learn to listen. And I'm not saying that at the beginning it's not necessary to question one's own thought system and that has been given meaning and reality. That's absolutely necessary. And that is part of the change of mind. But what I'm saying is that once the mind has understood that all that it sees here and has made it up doesn't really have a substance or a source, switches its mind towards listening. And of course, it has to be a listening to a real voice, the voice that speaks for God. We're calling it the voice of the Holy Spirit. And once there is listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit in you, and with that listening, it expands, or it shows up a new way of thinking as in terms of seeing with vision through him, through the Holy Spirit's light, right? Such seeing. It's not seeing objective reality, but it is seeing the truth behind every illusionary thought, seeing with vision through him. Once that is experienced, so more and more and more, though maybe another person presents a different nose, a different set of eyes, a different face, a different voice, a different language, right? What is there left to say? Right? Because you acknowledge and you realize this is way beyond of my description, or where I would hold an identification of self. And then you might maybe have a look at it. How long can you argue with yourself? With yourself that is subsequently showing up and being given to you from that recognition. Because you cannot argue with your Christ self, with your true self. There's nothing there to be argued about. There is no arguer, no subject, no one here to argue with. And you can feel that. You can actually see that. You can see when that soul, let's say, when that mind is emptied out from its limited thought forms. And of course, what else would you do than simply jump in and join on that light frequency, isn't it? Experience that universal happiness, love, light, peace. That's the reason you came for. You came into time. And it's only in that experience that you recognize him. But again, if you recognize him, you will listen. And the conversion of past ideas will therefore speed up immensely, and not just speed up in the transformative action, as we are describing it with those 3 days to awakening, but also part of those actions is to experience the replacement. It is a replacement by words of truth. It's a replacement by experiences in which you can literally touch this thought of surrender to him, surrendering to the Master, surrendering to the Holy Spirit, surrendering to God. Yeah. And that will bring about the experience of light in you. So it is all about being willing not to defend yourself with that you brought from the past, with your identification as someone existing in time-space. That would be the identity as a body. It's all about letting that go, being willing to be spirit. I'm spirit, right? Being willing to acknowledge that there is a plan of salvation coming from your higher power, your higher mind, your source, God himself. And this is what you accept. Speaking of the lessons of A Course in Miracles. And so on the mind training level, as I already expressed it before, we are arriving at the same result by recognizing, by understanding the unreality of those objects, the objective reality about you were previously arguing about, right? Holding it in an observation, in knowing what it is, in basically a limited experience on the conceptual level. And the understanding of the unreality is the same as you're quietly seeing what is really there. What is really there is the unlimited light energy. That is what you are. And that you just thought to perceive literally that unlimited light of yourself as something that you could hold on and limit into something that you could grasp conceptually and understand. You know, like it became you made out of light, literally a meaningless object. And that is what is the world that you perceive and see, right? Yeah. And of course, you must have thought about that it would be possible to project it successfully outside of yourself without experiencing the effects of your thoughts, without experiencing the effects of your seeing. That's also part of the beginning lessons. To acknowledge I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Because it was me who made it a meaninglessness, a limitation. And then, of course, no question asked that your experience must have been one of fear, in which the separation became very, very real. You have become fearful, because fear is this effect of the condition of thinking that you are separate from God. And fear is reflected out of all your emotions, except the emotion of love and joy and peace. But even those emotions still first, maybe in its limitation, and it becomes kind of a charitable experience. If you proceed with that, if you focus on that, if you give power to it, it ends up in its unlimited love, peace, joy. Yeah. What have you been taught throughout all time? We are repeating it regularly over and over again. We all have been taught to judge, right? And these were your authority figures, your parents, your school teachers, your priests, your political authorities, name it as you like, right? And you were expected to follow those perspectives, those instructions, to be about it as you were educated, right? But once the reflection is judged and seen as something to value in your experience of being a human being, right? And of this world, rather than simply being divine, how could it be possible to see God, to realize your own holiness, to realize your own completeness and totality? You see how responsible you were and still are for your human experience of separation. It's not really something that you are a victim of. you played the central part. You acknowledged, you agreed to it. You were putting yourself down and followed your authority figures. And you see, this is now what walking with Christ replaces, because, I repeat it again, you are placed into the center of the circle. That's where you belong. That's where your place is. In order to be right, in order to judge, in order to argue, in order to be on that level that we were so used to experience ourselves, that needed real persons, right? Personality, projected personality, and to feed them with your energy of your conceptual mind, to literally feed them with giving them the power. Now we are learning to take all the power back. Now we are accepting that all power is given us, as in heaven, so on earth, that it is the power of the Holy Son of God that we claim now to be. I am the Holy Son of God himself. Try it out and see how powerful you experience immediately in your mind that is of eternal nature of yourself. And of course, so we went along and have tried to persuade and convince ourselves and each other, the seeming other, of what is really true, what is right, what is worth knowing about an issue, about a situation, about a concept. Yeah. And many times we just try to demonstrate, look, brother, look, world, I know it better. I'm superior to you. This false sense of claiming power, but not really being willing to see everyone in the same power. Wow. And Jesus teaches us in the beginning of his Course in Miracles that this way of, as we're describing it right now, this way of limited self-recognition is really based on an authority problem. Right? The ultimate authority problem is the authority problem with your source, with God. And you just have split it up into many entities, many personalities, many objects, and different levels. Yeah. But just pretending to know something or to have some power. Now all power is offered and is available to be acknowledged and to be accepted. Yeah. Because if you stay in any form, in the slightest form of an authority problem with yourself, you must know that you are in competition with God. And that competition with God can only be you as an ego in competition with God. It's the human condition that hasn't gone beyond its accepted inheritance of, I'm calling it a praying animal, right? Just being basically trapped in a very basic thought form, but being completely ignorant of what lies beyond and what is uniting us all throughout all dimensions. Yeah. To believe to know something better, just that you know anything, of course, is bound to bring conflict. It is the knower, the one who believes to know. A knower also has to face the results of his judgments, his feelings of being, as we mentioned it, unworthy, ideas of littleness, trying to cover up that ignorance by calling it parroting borrowed concepts from those projected authorities, those who know better, right? Not coming from one's own experience, but from what the idols represent and have told you. Wow, wow, wow. I love it to acknowledge in the Course in Miracles where he shows us that this is part of a defense strategy, a defense mechanism, that this false self of this false sense of self, right, has developed. Yeah. We're calling it the ego, right? Because this worthless you, right, that you made yourself, in which you believed in, also always has to be afraid of not being respected or not being recognized for what you know, right? And though there is no one else out there other than you, as whatever you made yourself, but as an untrained mind, right? A self in idolization. When meeting an other, right? Yourself as another, you could not reflect littleness and or superiority. It is then either the submission game or the superiority game, and taking on some limited power of authority. But both are the expressions of the arrogance of the ego, and both are really representations of mind sick, a sick mind. That's what sickness is. It is the nature of the ego, always at war with itself. So this is what we are escaping now. This is where we gave our commitment to go to any lengths and not to stop until we experience ourselves as one and know ourselves in everyone and everything as the one and same self. What do you say? Are you with me? And so, of course, of the seeker for truth, or the one who is dedicated to the truth, the religious believer, or the one who prays, the meditator, a follower of God, let's say, the learner, the honest seeker for truth. He will always prefer to not know, and to not know. Not knowing anything here is literally the doorway out of the prison. And part of those actions, which already are seen on this first action, the first day, but really being brought about and come into awareness on the second day to awakening, in this second action, is of course also asking for help, turning to the Holy Spirit, turning to God, asking the Holy Spirit for the undoing of all that has been believed to be known, of all questioning also, all questions, then simply wait and listen. That's all really what you asked for. Just be patient, stand still, wait a moment, just listen to that voice that answers everything truthfully. That is a representation of a one answer to all your questions. And so also then to enter into your relationship, and where you in your daily life situation seem that you would need to make decisions and choices, that you judge only with him. You really hand it over to him. You really let him guide you and show you what the answer is, where you want to move along. And that needs a deep acceptance, isn't it? Yeah. That's really where you become part of the sonship. That's really where you become an extension of the sonship. And all we remember is that's already part of the Bible, that God does not judge. He left judgment to you. But also that's what you chose then and made a self-identity. But if you would, okay, now judgment in my separated self is part of my thinking in separation, well, I don't have any use of that anymore, because if God doesn't judge, I would rather come up and also learn how not to judge. It wouldn't take much time to let go of all judgment, isn't it? He expressed that actually in the words in the Bible in the 5th chapter of John, right? I have it here in front of me. For the Father judges no man, but has committed all judgment unto the Son, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honors not the Son honors not the Father, which has sent him. You see, not honoring the Son of God is when the judgment is applied. And automatically it becomes a not honoring of the Father who sent the Son, who is an extension of the Father in heaven, right? Who is of same quality. And so we learn then actually to judge with the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit only judges us towards our perfection, our wholeness, our holiness, being healed, only on that level, being sinless, being free of guilt. Those are the judgments that we receive by the Holy Spirit. And so in that listening, we actually receive or experience his sound of silence. And that pervades all of the universe and will represent the frequency of his teaching. Thank you. Thank you. And ultimately, of course, it will echo into all corners of the world. It will be heard and understood by everyone as the one ultimate last answer behind and in every word, behind and in every expression. Wow. Awesome. Well, at the end of our coming together today, I would like to share an aphorism that I wrote many, many years ago. It was actually in the beginning phase of being in the experience of revelation, and also just having allowed words to flow freely through my mind and express themselves however it came along. And you might see there isn't much conceptualization possible at all. Here it is. Well, it's not really the season of Christmas, but it is a little bit about that. Snow storming, Christmas songs, colorful lights everywhere, a warm black blanket, ice cold air creeping through the nose, a similarity to breaking yet clear opening in the heart, ecstasy and movement, the devastating moment before the miracle turns up. Everything is here in me and so in you too. What does it really mean to share? Could I meet anyone else other than myself? Forgiveness offers the only love in me. Ah, how wonderful. Ah, how sweet. It's an expression also of poetic mind that already realizes it doesn't need to rhyme. It can just flow. It can just come through and stay in that. Ah, how sweet. What love. What revelation. Thank you. Thank you so much, my brother. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna leave it with you. Have a most wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are, whenever you join in. Bye bye.